left side of your screen, takes off right around McConnell and flushes it down all over Sabonis. Boom!
Woo! That's a first as an NBA player for LaMelo Ball.
2, 3, come on!
Ang programang ito ay rated SPG, striktong patnubay at gabay ng magulang ang kailangan. Maaaring may masiselang tema, lengguwahe, karahasan, sexual, horror o droga na hindi angkop sa mga bata.
Here comes LaMelo Ball with his hair on fire. Balls! Wow!
Look at this. Behind the back pass, and yet, I mean, if he tries to dunk that, maybe the Sixers get a hand on it. Windmilling. Oh!
LaMelo has 8 on it. Darts through. LaMelo Ball at the rim. Oh, take that, big man.
LaMelo, look at him handle that ball. Quick turn, crossover, left to right.
Doubling their pleasure over New York. Kevin Knox misses his first shot. Full-length baseball pass, and Gordon Hayward catches it. Cool off a little bit.
His pass. Melo right on the money. Oh, I mean, he threw it right in stride where Gordon Hayward just caught it in rhythm. And it was almost like a little post-up, just turned right over the left shoulder. Splash it.
Melo saved it to Biz, gets it right back, shoots a pass over to Rozier, and the reverse is gone.
My goodness.
15 for the Hornets.
LaMelo Ball, look at this pass right there. That's a great angle. Good camera work to show the reverse spin that he put on the ball to bounce right back up to Rozier. Right between two defenders. And
LaMelo left alone. Leaves it for Biz, 2 hands.
that easy play for LaMelo.
Be showing you the boing-yoings and then hesitation. Oh, show it in one hand.
Seth Curry has 5 blocked shots now. Tobias Harris, 1 and done. Bounce pass, Gordon Hayward. Oh, what a look. LaMelo Ball.
That's how you're going to have to score.
Devontae catch and shoot. Offensive rebound, LaMelo. LaMelo Ball! Oh, what a wondrous quarter for the Charlotte Hornets down in Dallas, Texas.
Of this young man. Another offensive board. He might have looked at the other end of the shot clock and said, I got to get it up.
We're underway. Hornets have the basketball. Whip around pass, a beauty! LaMelo finds P.J. Washington.
Look at this pass right quickly to P.J.
Bad pass. Hayward's got it. Numbers for the Hornets. LaMelo scored another foul! Oh, the kids come of age.
This right here, he took the pass away, and Antetokounmpo wanted to go to Holiday. LaMelo's in the passing lane, and then look at the hang time with the hit right there.
Didn't spend one day in college, but you could tell he would have been an English major. Just beautiful spin on that shot. Gordon Hayward, 10 first quarter points. Gets it out to LaMelo. Fastball inside. Miles Bridges cashes in.
Yeah, Miles keeps the defender on his back. Inside out basketball right there. Look at the
my goodness.
The lane become wide open.
Underneath the basket. And Miles Bridges comes away with it. LaMelo on the run. Hayward with two hands.
LaMelo Ball knows how to deliver it. He wanted it.
The series against the Hornets.
LaMelo so good at the look. Shooters are valuable.
Yeah, they are. LaMelo hangs and hits. How about that? Rock the cradle. LaMelo, 22 points on Wednesday in Dallas. Working against Jang. The spin. Scored out the window.
Work is good. This guy right here. Just get the big guy moving and change directions. There's no way he can keep up with you.
Beal had 5 quick ones to begin the ball game. Coming off a game where he only made 1 shot against Miami. Hey, LaMelo Ball from deep downtown. Caleb Martin, Miles Bridges sits. PJ.
There it is.
If that's ruled an assist, that's number 10 for LaMelo Ball, and he's got a triple-double.
See if somebody can get hot offensively for the Hornets.
LaMelo hung in the air long enough to get it to PJ.
About you score and a layup on the offensive end of the floor. Nice hang right there by LaMelo to get it to PJ. And the Hawks come right back at you, get to the free throw line.
Brogdon. First miss for Brogdon leads to the run out, and Rozier scores it.
Anything was open.
PJ. A beautiful find. LaMelo hit it, and PJ's now got a pair of 3.
Get aggressive. Look at this right here. Good delivery. How about that? Right on point. Shot, the fadeaway for a 7'3" guy.
And LaMelo crawls it up and in with contact.
Still playing hard, trying to fight. It's by Burke. It's the reach in. And he was almost too far to shoot that with the left hand. That's why he switched it to the right.
LaMelo starting to feel it. Double figures for the kid.
Look at LaMelo stop right behind the screen. Who's out for the season with ACL.
Yeah, tough break for him. Finally found a home in Orlando. LaMelo bully ball. Get out of the way, Trae Young.
Oh, right there. Knows Trae Young. Oh, goodness. Too small.
Here's LaMelo Ball off the bounce. Steps into the lane. That was sweet.
LaMelo has Crowder on him now. Oh, yes! High off the window for the rookie.
First in the last 2 minutes.
He's just too quick. And then he can elevate.
Base stealer. Stretch a single to a double.
Oh, beautiful dime. And Biz catches in. Fantastic assist. He's got a wrap around his right wrist. Dell, he took a fall here in the second quarter.
Right there. You see guys always trying to break their fall with their hands and their wrists. And that floor does not give. You see him right there. Maybe it's a wrist or a thumb. Yeah. It's the trainer working on the wrist.
Yeah, so he went to the locker room at the break and now has this wrap, and he's been fidgeting with it. We'll see if it becomes an issue. Hopefully not. Playing in their 43rd, so he has missed 8 games so far this campaign. Gordon Hayward, good catch in traffic. LaMelo, 3-pointer for the 19-year-old.
Deep one. Gave it to Terry. Relocate.
Great job on Kawhi Leonard by P.J. Washington.
Forced a really difficult shot.
And Gordon.
This is the second time he's made a pass with his left hand.
I did notice it, yep.
First one was more difficult than that one.
Oh, LaMelo. A frenetic.
Not fault the effort of this young man. He continues to play downhill, play aggressive. Thought he got clipped on the leg. He tried to flip that one up.
Shoehorned into the building on a nightly basis. 24,042 you guys averaged.
Yeah, if you had a ticket to a Hornets game, you did not give it up. You got there early and you stayed late. It was the place to be. The place to be.
Rams back in for the Hornets as LaMelo Ball is being looked at by. So we will take a break. 3:47 remaining in our third quarter.
Just terrible news. Charlotte rookie LaMelo Ball is expected to miss the rest of the season with a fracture in his right wrist. A day after LeBron goes out indefinitely with a high ankle sprain, now LaMelo is expected to miss the rest of the season with a fracture in his right wrist. The injury happened on a fall in the Hornets' recent game, and then after an MRI, the fracture was discovered. He basically falls and braces his fall by landing on both of his hands, specifically here now causing injury to that right wrist. We call this pattern of injury a foosh mechanism, fall on an outstretched hand. Usually someone's falling forward and they basically reflexively put their hands out to brace their fall, and as you land, that load from you falling gets transferred up through the bones of the wrist and can cause a wrist fracture. So here's LaMelo's coming down, all of his body weight and momentum is carrying him into the ground, and he's bracing that impact and transferring that load through his hands and wrists. Specifically here in this position, you can see his wrist is in an extended position, meaning it's pointed up like this, and all of that load's going to be coming through his radius and the ulna, primarily the radius in his forearm, to help brace that fall. And this is going to be the moment when that injury occurred. We could see right away LaMelo's grabbing at his wrist here, signifying that he's in pain. Here on the bench, we could see the medical team examining his wrist. And as we'll point out in the anatomy, it looks like they're working on the radial or the thumb side of the wrist. We saw him come back in with this support. Really, this is more supporting the thumb and kind of the bones near the thumb and the wrist. But now, of course, we've heard the news about the fracture. Now we can narrow down our differential a little bit from Woj's tweet saying that the fracture is near the thumb. If we look at our biodigital anatomy tool here, of course, we can see our thumb here on this side. Everything on the thumb side of the hand is going to be considered the radial side of the wrist, and everything on the other side is going to be the ulnar side of the wrist. That's because the bones in the forearm correspond to those sides. So this is going to be the radius that falls on the radial side of the wrist, and the ulna on the ulnar side of the wrist. All of these bones that we have coming through here in the wrist are all going to be our carpal bones that are your classic wrist bones. As we go up, then these red ones are going to be our metacarpals that sit more in the palm. And of course, beyond that, we're going to have our phalanges. Now, technically, if somebody had a fracture of the radius or the ulna and it was near the wrist, we would still call that a wrist fracture. So we always have to keep these two bones on our differential for possible fracture sites. One of the most common fractures we see in orthopedics is actually a distal radius fracture, meaning this end of the radius from a foosh, a fall on an outstretched hand. So that's definitely on the differential here. If we talk about specifically the wrist bones that are near the thumb, there's really two. The first one is this guy here called the scaphoid. It's kind of this peanut-shaped bone. And then the next one above it is going to be the trapezium. The trapezium is honestly very rarely fractured. Usually when we're talking about a fracture over here, it's to this scaphoid. And scaphoid fractures are particularly troublesome because number one, they can actually be really hard to see on initial x-ray. Part of that is just the complex anatomy of the wrist bones, but also the fracture lines can just be really small and hard to see. So what we'll sometimes do in clinic, if somebody comes in and we suspect a scaphoid fracture, if we take the x-ray might be normal. We actually have to have them come back in a week or two to repeat the x-ray, because what can happen in the initial stages of fracture healing is the fracture line actually gets a little bit bigger to where it then will show up in the x-ray before it ultimately closes back up to heal. But if we're highly suspicious of a scaphoid fracture, we would go straight to something like an MRI, because an MRI is going to show it right away. This whole sequence of LaMelo coming back in the game, he then had an MRI that showed the fracture, also makes me kind of put the scaphoid fracture higher up on the differential just because of that kind of node sequence of how those can present. Typically, fractures to the radius, to the ulna, are pretty easy to see on x-ray. Similarly, fractures to kind of the base of the thumb. Now, if this is in fact a scaphoid fracture, there's another thing that the medical team has to really consider, and that's the potential for delayed or impaired healing because of the unique blood flow actually comes up and then basically wraps around to come from the end of the bone and then work its way downward. That means if we then have a fracture that kind of cuts through right here, we're losing blood supply to this portion of the scaphoid, and you can have something develop called avascular necrosis. The navicular is another bone that we worry about this blood supply and avascular necrosis, and of course we hear about the hip. So the scaphoid is one of the unique fractures in the wrist that we really have to make sure we don't miss. So with that anatomy in mind, let's go back to our play one more time. We can see LaMelo here coming down, and as he falls, right there, lands with that wrist extended, that fall in the outstretched hand, load transmitted through the palm into those carpal bones of the wrist and up through the forearm. One more interesting thing here we saw in the replays is LaMelo here is actually kind of pointing to more so his distal radius here on his wrist. So this top portion is going to be the radial side of the wrist, and this is going to be the ulnar side. You can see where the medical staff is pushing is a little bit more up near those wrist bones, but LaMelo seems to be pointing that he's got some pain kind of lower down. This wouldn't really jive 100% with Woj saying the pain is near the thumb, but You can have referred pain. It's possible there's some ligaments that were sprained here a little bit, so I'm sure we'll get more information over the coming days. I wish I could give you guys a little bit more clarity here, but as you can see from our anatomy, anytime you're dealing with a bone injury in the wrist, there's so many articular surfaces, there's so many joints in there that these really can be quite severe and pretty complex with the ultimate management and outcomes. Long-term down the road, this isn't something that you worry about having an effect on a player's career like an ACL tear or an Achilles tear, assuming there's no complications with bone healing or surgical infections. This isn't something you think of as having long-term implications on a player's health. Now, if the fracture involves any of the cartilage surface in those joints, then you have a little bit more concern. But so far for LaMelo, just hearing wrist fracture doesn't make me think of long-term career type implications.
Oba, que louco!